It was at this moment he knew.
So I'm a little slow with this one because it came out in 2023 and I've only just gotten around to finishing it, but hey, I like to do things in my own time. Don't let people push you into doing things just so you can be the first to finish it or whatever. That's a terribly unfun way to interact with things. Anyway, when I first saw images for Hollow Cocoon back in the day, of course I was intrigued. Here's this great looking monster surrounded by protective charms, and honestly, we don't get a lot of dedicated indie Japanese horror games that look like this. It was billed as a sort of stalker/stealth game, which unfortunately for me isn't my favourite genre, but I'm willing to overlook these things for some great Japanese horror. So, is it great Japanese horror? Well, let's take a look. Hollow Cocoon was made by Nayuta Studio, who are a small indie game development studio in Japan. To date, they have 2 games to their name, this being the second one. It's a first-person horror adventure game set in 1980s Japan. Like, at this point, you can say less. I'm already sold. Step into the shoes of Minato Jimba, a college student returning to his mother's hometown after receiving news that his grandmother is in critical condition. Hide yourself from the monster and gather vital evidence to unravel the bone-chilling truth lurking beneath the surface. This is the basic premise of the story and game. You play Minato, who heads back to his grandmother's house in the countryside after hearing news of her terrible condition. They haven't seen each other for a decade or so, thanks to some family trauma that you'll spend the rest of the game digging up. All while being stalked by some creepy, lanky monster that seems to be living in her house. I wonder if these 2 things could possibly be connected in any way. Now, before we go any further, I need to address the elephant in the room. If you suffer from motion sickness in first-person games, like me, this game is hell to play. The Steam page notes that there are various options to help alleviate motion sickness, but none of this helped me. I had to struggle through the game in 10-minute bursts before turning it off, because if I played it for any longer than that, it just whacked me. I felt awful, got migraines, had to sit down for a while, etc. So, something to keep in mind if you're sensitive to first-person POV like I am. Now, gameplay-wise, there isn't a lot to this game. I don't say that as a negative either. There exists a space for all types of games, even in the Japanese horror genre, and this one is ultimately pretty simple. You need to search through the house for items that will allow you to move to the next section of the game, generally through acquiring something specific to solve a pretty simple puzzle. All the while, you'll uncover files that explain the story, and in numerous sections, you'll have to do this while hiding from the monster who is stalking the area. Again, I'm not a fan of stalker enemies. If you enjoy them, fantastic, but they're not for me. That being said, other than one section of the game, I didn't find her to be too egregious, and if you're playing on the easier difficulties, she shouldn't be that hard to deal with. I hear she's an actual nightmare on, well, nightmare difficulty, but I haven't played that, so I'll take other people's word for it. However, you don't really have any way to fight back against this monster. There are no weapons, and she does tend to spot you quite easily, so all you can do is run and try to find somewhere to hide, hoping that she doesn't see or hear you go in there. If she does, she'll rip you out and toss you across the room, which means you'll have to run again and find somewhere else. Minato has stamina and health as well, so you need to manage those. Otherwise, she'll just kill you. The only real way you can fight back, if you can call it that, is to run to a room which has a red talisman you can save at. These have a few limited uses where they can also banish the monster temporarily. And by banish, it kind of just moves her to another section of the house so you can start exploring again. It doesn't actually get rid of her. But you can only do this a few times at each talisman before they stop working, so you need to keep that in mind as well. Still, I think I used this mechanic only once or twice during my entire playthrough, so it's realistically not something you need to worry about too much. And this is the basic gameplay loop. Search the section of the family estate that you're in, digging up files that sometimes drop you into a tome of lore dump at once, and items you'll need to solve a puzzle to proceed to the next section of the estate. While the game starts in a rather normal Japanese-style house, once you're out of there, you move into a much larger residence that's far more expansive and confusing to move around. There's also some much smaller in-between sections that try to add a little variety, but you'll be spending most of the game inside Japanese-style housing. I like this setting, so not an issue for me. While the gameplay itself is quite simple, the game still wears its influences very proudly on its sleeve. Most obviously, Fatal Frame and Cocoon, my beloved. In fact, if you've played Cocoon before, you should be able to follow the story and what's going on here quite easily, as the story seems to take the majority of its inspiration from that. But you'll also find a smattering of Fatal Frame, and of course there's some dam construction, because what's Japanese horror without dam construction? And even a little Silent Hill here and there too. And of course, the Stalker enemy is reminiscent of numerous Capcom Stalker enemies from back in the day as well. The game also isn't very long. You can finish your first playthrough in around 3 hours or so. And when I checked speedrun times, most clock in at less than 20 minutes. So, the majority of that time is simply exploring and figuring out what to do. Once you do know what to do, you can run through each section pretty quickly. As such, the game does offer 4 different endings, and after you beat the game for the first time, it also unlocks a shop where you can, of course, buy different accessories and items for the monster, and various things for yourself as well to add more replayability. That being said, I'm not sure how replayable the game is because of how simple it is. There are some files you can only get after beating the game once, meaning it's worthwhile to finish the game at least twice. But it's not like there's a whole lot of gameplay happening. But then again, it's also short, so it's not like you're spending 10 hours playing the same thing just to find 1 or 2 new files either. So, do I recommend this game if you're a Japanese horror fan? Of course. As of writing this, it's currently on Steam at full price for €15, which really isn't bad. And if you wait for a sale, you can get it for even cheaper. If you keep in mind how short it is, and that there isn't a huge amount of gameplay, well, there's a great story here to unravel. That alone is worth at least 1 playthrough. And if you're interested, I will be doing a story explained video soon, so keep an eye out for that too. But it's a solid indie horror game that's very pretty to look at, and offers a decent story you have to piece together yourself. One complaint I will offer up is that I wish more of the story was told through cutscenes, however. Having to stop somewhere in the house when a stalker enemy is on my ass to read a 9-page novel detailing the sordid details of my family's horrible history is more than a little jarring at times. There are also just so few cutscenes in general that it would have been nice to see more of this stuff being told visually, and not through giant walls of text. But yeah, for what it is, Hollow Cocoon is not a bad game. Is it the most super amazing thing you'll ever play? Probably not, but I think it's a worthy addition to any Japanese horror library. But what did you guys think? Have you played Hollow Cocoon yourself yet? Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.